Thank you for auditing the always positive new music review show hosted by a French professor who's continuing his series, An American's Guide to Balašević. I started this whole series as an effort to better understand my wife, who is from the country that is now known as Serbia, although she was born in it when it was called Yugoslavia. And I understood very early from dating her that in order to understand her as a person, if I really want to love her, I need to understand where she came from. I need to understand her culture. And I would say that all of the best parts of her culture are in Balašević's music. And if you're an American, you probably have never heard of Balašević, much less listened to his music, so this is a guide for you. Now that's how I started off this series a couple years ago. The last couple of videos about Balašević have been a little bit different because there's a project that I've been working on and I wanted to unveil with big fanfare this new project, but unfortunately that project is on hold. And when I was working on that project, I was working with my wife, so she would actually help me make these videos about Balašević. But now I'm going back to the old school. This is a surprise video. She doesn't know that I'm making it. Like I did for the first video I ever did, it's for her birthday. Right? Her birthday is a couple days after American Christmas, about a week before Serbian Christmas, and this is like her favorite album. Or one of her favorite albums. I mean, every time I talk about a Balašević album, she tells me why it's her favorite. And that's part of what makes him so popular. Part of the reason why this project is on hold is that we have a new baby. I'm very excited about that. That's why I'm hiding in my office right now. I told her I had to go into the office to do some scanning and some grading and all that stuff, but that's not why. Sorry, I didn't mean to lie to you, but I had to find some way to record the large chunk of this video. Now, I am going to edit this video. I am going to include little bits later. I ordered some things from the mail that are going to supplement this, kind of little visual props that will help you better understand this album. But I've had to sneak around because usually she would, leave the house and I would be at home and I could record these videos in secret. I haven't been able to do that. The funny thing is, this album came out, 003, Nula 3, came out when my wife was 4 months old. Do you know how old our baby is now? 4 months old. It's a coincidence. My wife is a scientist, so she wouldn't care. No data is in there, but I think it's pretty nice. I think it's a pretty fun idea, and I love that it's one of her favorite albums. Based on what little I understand of the Balašević community, this is one of his fans' favorite albums as well. In doing research, it's interesting because the thing I saw emphasized the most is that this is the most political album. This is allegedly proven by this cover with the three wise monkeys from Japanese mythology. See no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil. I suppose this album came out in '85. It came out when after Tito died and Yugoslavia was falling apart, but before the civil wars they would actually fully tear it apart. You see all this newsprint in the back. I'll talk about what it actually says. I've translated a lot of it. And a lot of it's about sort of corruption and sort of general political themes. And certainly there is a real strong political bent to this album. There is a political message in this album. But that's actually not the real strength. I am going to go against the common wisdom that this is the beginning of political Balašević or a very strong political statement. I'm also going to go against the dearly departed George Balašević himself. In an interview I read that he thinks of this album as only having one real song, Slovenska. Certainly that is the song which appears to be the most popular song from this album. My wife has played the song for me so many times. I'm going to have a fun time talking to you about that song while acknowledging that I will, realistically, never get it. I don't like the narrative that you can't understand Balašević if you're not from Yugoslavia. But in that case, I believe it. I believe there's something I can't understand. That's okay. The main thing that I review on this channel is rap music. I can't understand that either. I'm an observer of culture. I'm not always a participant. But still, I don't think that the real strength of this album is even in the song Slovenska. even though that is clearly the big song from the album and his personal favorite. What's fascinating to me is that the last work that I covered by Balašević was actually his last work with Rani Mraz od Ladji Cirkus. And when I analyzed that album with my wife, I really emphasized the concept of romanticism. Romanticism not as in like, ooh, I love you, but romanticism in terms of living life as though you're in a novel. And part of why I like Balašević so much is because whenever he is romantic in that way, he is also criticizing romanticism, because romanticism is a bad way to live. But what I love in this album is that it's actually jam-packed with realism. Now, yes, there is social realism. We'll talk about that later when he writes about mining. But what I mean is like life as it is actually lived. And most importantly, like the relationship that you can have with a partner. Balašević is, I would say, a wonderful observer of human nature. And if the earlier albums, were mostly, it seems to me, about a rambling man who's gambling and drinking in pubs and finds a good woman and has to leave her and has to go and has to leave and is rambling along in the circus. This is an album, I think it's 4 years into his marriage, about monogamy. But it's a realistic album about monogamy. It is not an album saying monogamy is the greatest and it's easy. It is not an album saying monogamy is the worst and I hate it. It is actually the difficulty of being with a good woman for your whole life. Like the difficulty and joy of monogamy. And I'll tell you, as somebody who is making this for his wife, somebody who is deeply in love with his wife, I am so thankful that there is an artist out there, even if he sings in a language that I can't understand, who truly addresses the nature of marriage, of a good marriage. Because good marriages are complicated. Bad marriages are actually pretty simple, I think. I don't know. Maybe I'm speaking too pithily. But if we take it on a whole, with very notable exceptions, okay? Not every song is about this, but the majority of this album is about the joys and the difficulty of monogamy. How to have a high sex drive, perhaps a romantic wandering mind thinking about other women and other partners, and how a happy home life is better and actually more fulfilling than that. But it's very much in dialogue. He's in dialogue with, I would say, his younger self throughout this entire album. He is in dialogue. Balašević, the family man, is in dialogue with Balašević, the vagabond. And very clearly the family man is winning, which is what I think makes Balašević such an important figure. And again, I'm talking about this to you, the American. And there's not that many people like that in America either. But in particular, based on what I have heard from multiple sources, okay? Well, okay, forget it. I'm not even going to just talk about Slavic. Men, in general, okay? It is very hard to find a good man. By that, I don't mean a person who acts good, who appears good to the outside world, but a good man who is actually good with his partner. Somebody who has a sense of humor about himself. Balašević shows that. I mean, look at this cover. He looks like a fat, stupid monkey. That's how he shows himself, as a fat, stupid monkey. 3 times. He has a sense of humor about himself, kindness and empathy towards others, true respect for women, and acknowledgement of his own flaws. If you were trying to develop a sort of sheet for what I believe women actually want in a partner, it is sense of humor about yourself, kindness towards others, empathy towards others, respect towards women, acceptance of your own flaws. And consistently he has done that. Even in his rambling vagabond days where he sings about it, he's always in this position of that kind of man. Now, it is possible that it is equally hard to find men like that anywhere in the world. From what I've been told, it is more difficult to find someone like that in the Balkans. Culturally, historically, so much strife, so much war, so much hard times. Okay, there's no judgment coming from me here. Okay, there's no better culture or worse culture that exists. But it does seem to me that part of what makes Balašević so powerful is that there are not enough men like him in the world, and there are certainly not enough men like him in Yugoslavia, in the Balkans. But again, I don't want this to seem like I'm pretending like this is a uniquely Slavic problem. It's not. I mean, in America, I grew up in the 80s in America. And there were these two figures who were these fatherly, gentle people. The dream husband and the dream father. And in the cutthroat 80s, and the wealth despair, and the selfishness, these figures represented so much to us. One of them is Mr. Rogers. Okay, the PBS TV star. If you're one of the Slavic people watching this, Mr. Rogers was a TV show on public television in America by a very kindly man who acted like your kind grandfather, who would tell stories and would treat people with respect and was very gentle and kind. There is a cult of Mr. Rogers in America. And it's kind of sad because really there should be more than just Mr. Rogers. We should have more figures like that. The other one is a guy named Bill Cosby, who represented a diverse America, represented a dream father, represented aspirations for so many people. And of course, he ended up being a serial rapist. So, we're stuck with Mr. Rogers. That's the one that we have here. So this album, I think perhaps why this album really strikes people is definitely, even compared with his previous album, chronologically, the previous album, his second album, he really is becoming this family man. He is showing how to be a family man while constantly making it clear that he doesn't really know what he's doing. And what is that if not real? There are some consistent themes to Balašević, which I love, and goes into the nature of what makes him such an important figure, I believe, at least to my wife. So maybe my wife is abnormal. Maybe other people don't appreciate Balašević in the same way that she does. But the things that I see in Balašević, which might be the things that she likes in me, I don't know. But one thing is he's goofy. The word in Serbian for goofy is glupo. So I think of him, gospodine glupo, okay, Mr. Goofy, like constantly childish, constantly, and I've said this before, but he's an old man who acts like a child, and when he was a young man who acted like an old man. He manages to be all ages at once because he always feels like he's in middle age, with his belly, with his graying beard, which is cool, with his graying beard and his belly, and he feels like a middle-aged man who possesses the wisdom of an old man, the ability to see time, the ability to see relationships, to see patterns, the kindness of an old man. Also with the spirit of a child. Like, he's constantly goofy, he's constantly making jokes, he's really childishly serious and seriously childish at all times, which is one of my favorite contradictions in any form of art. And he's able to do all those things at once. He's like Yoda. Sorry, that wasn't on my script. I don't have a script, I just have notes. That wasn't on my notes. But I think Yoda is actually very similar. Like, why the character from Star Wars, why do we like Yoda so much? Because he's so old, but he's also so childish, So, that's one trait that spans everything I listen to from Balašević. The other is his mastery of nostalgia. Gospodinja nostalgia. I'm working on my Serbo-Croatian here. He is always acutely aware of the dangers of nostalgia, and this album talks about the dangers of nostalgia, while at the same time, he indulges in it. And nostalgia is tricky, you know. Nostalgia is and has always been a tool of fascism. Always, okay? It's a very, very dangerous force. It is mostly a negative force, nostalgia. It is very often used by conservative forces to make an appeal to a simpler time, and what made that time simpler was those conservative forces were more repressive of the oppressed. Okay? So, from Ronald Reagan to Donald Trump to Hitler, they all used the same trick. And I hate to tell you, many leaders of former Yugoslavia as well. Okay? This idea that we can go back to the past when it was simpler. So what I love about Balašević is he never indulges in that kind of nostalgia. Interestingly, what I think makes him so powerful for people from the Balkans is that his nostalgia is for a time before conservatism ruined everything. You see? Like I think the feeling that people get listening to his music is like, oh, remember when Yugoslavia kind of existed? Remember before the Civil War? Remember when tribalism and nationalism didn't turn us against each other? And remember when we had that difficult, complicated peace? Okay? Like, I think that's part of it. And also, you know, this nostalgia is not so much for a simpler time geopolitically, but more for a simpler time socially and culturally. He very much goes back to a sort of agrarian past. I think that very much connects to my wife as well, and I imagine to a lot of listeners in former Yugoslavia, because, you know, my wife, to a certain extent, like at times seemed like she grew up on a farm, you know, like she has all these stories about like killing chickens and stuff. You know, I grew up in suburban America, so like the idea of like seeing my grandparents slaughter a chicken, I couldn't imagine anything further from that, you know. So okay, so there's two things that we have. Gospodina Glupo, Gospodina Nostalgia, and then we have Gospodina Vojvodina. So Vojvodina, the region where he is from, he is the man of the north. So it's ever since, you know, before I met my wife, legitimately, I was not entirely sure of the difference between Siberia and Serbia. That's embarrassing. My ignorance is profound. Okay? I knew they were different places, okay? I knew that. But I didn't really understand. Like, I didn't understand anything about Serbia. Or Croatia. Or Makedonka. Okay? I didn't understand anything about this region. And it's been this great gift. Because even though I am a professor of French, and I understand French culture, and to a lesser extent, Francophone culture, I can tell you the cultural differences between the south of France, the east of France, the west of France, the north of France. So getting to learn all of these cultural differences, that Balašević is so Vojvodinian. And again, this is part of the interesting mythology behind Balašević and my wife, which I only tell to the audience here, I only tell to the camera, because it's informative of the value that he can have. So my wife is always identified with the part of her family that came from Vojvodina, which is the northern part of Serbia, which is above the Danube. So the Danube River goes through Belgrade, goes through Novi Sad, which is the main city in Vojvodina, and of course it goes through Budapest, and of course it goes through, you know, it goes all over the place, right? So he is so insistent on hitting on Vojvodinian ways of speech, culture, food, and on this album, he even dips into like Austro-Hungarian history. This is actually going to be really important because part of what makes, historically, that south of the Danube was taken over by the Ottomans and north of the Danube was taken over by the Austro-Hungarians. So a totally different cultural past, okay? So like all of that is in this one little album here. These three different gospodinas. I'm pronouncing that wrong. Is there a ñ sound? I don't know. I'm embarrassed. I wish that you've been watching me try to learn Serbo-Croatian for the past like 4 years. I haven't made much progress. It's hard. It's hard in America. Musically, always the same thing happens. With every single Balašević album I've ever listened to, the first time I listen to it, I don't like it. There are certain things that he does musically which I am not initially inclined to enjoy. In particular, he makes soft rock, right? So rock and roll that is not hard. And especially with this album, it's very 80s sounding, which makes sense. It came out in 1985, but I think it's mostly a drum machine and not a real drummer, and that kind of dates the sound. The guitars have tons of chorus effects on them. But what happens every single time I listen to a Balašević album, the first time I listen, I'm like, eh. Second time, I'm like, meh. Third time, I'm like, And now I'm driving to work today. I'm driving in to do this video, and I'm just driving, I have all the songs stuck in my head. You don't understand the hell that I go through when I make these videos, because I secretly listen to this music all the time. And then I go see my wife, and I just want to keep singing, like, I just want to keep singing the songs, because every single song is stuck in my head, except for the last song. Every single song, except for Christmas Eve song, is like stuck in my head. I can like recall it right now how it goes. So even though the instrumentation is not what I would like it to be, the songwriting is there, the ability to write a hook is there, and my eternal appreciation for Josip Bošek. Now I'm scared, because I've been told that Josip Bošek does not work with Balašević forever. He leaves Balašević's side. I love Josip Bošek. I love his guitar work. I love even his production. Like, I've come to really love it. So I'm a little bit scared of that changing. So musically, that's where we are. And I'll go more into it. But let's take just 1 second to just look at this. So we see all these stories here. You know, a letter from Los Angeles, prices for the experience of freedom. Interesting. Economic, social, crime, danger, in the style of crime fiction. Burned in the train, the curse of patience. Extradition, defendant in Burma. Crumbs through the eyes of the needle. Busy until further notice. Josip Bošek won a mandate. There we go. And, so this is that political stuff that they're talking about. Okay. And I haven't read this all. If that project gets off the ground, I will read every single word on here and have an analysis for you. But for now, let's keep it simple. But my favorite thing on here is right here. And I think this is actually the secret to the album. Glava je izvor tegoba. 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 Glava je izvor tegoba. The head is the source of trouble. Balašević. The head is the source of trouble. I hate to tell you, my dear wife, I am going to be saying this sentence probably 2 or 3 times a week for the rest of my life. I love this. Glava je izvor tegoba. I will just be saying that. It doesn't matter who you are. I will be saying this as though it is the most famous cliche maxim in the whole world. Glava je izvor tegoba. The head is the source of trouble. Because when we're dealing with this realist depiction, when we're dealing with this question of romanticism, the romanticism is created inside the head, and the head works against itself. Balašević is well aware, even if there's a political bent to this album and a poetic bent to this album, that a lot of his music is about the way that his own head gets himself into trouble and how he has to get himself out of that trouble with his head and with his heart. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful line. And it's right there on the front. Glava je izvor tegoba. Now tell me in the comments, did I get this right? Did I get this wrong? I need to thank someone. Miloš Spasojević is someone who's supported this channel for a while. And because I haven't been able to count on my wife's participation. I've been asking him all sorts of questions about this album, and he's been helping me out quite a bit. So he's the Josip Bošek on this project. So thank you, Miloš. So let's get into the album, huh? 25 minutes in. All right. Let's take the first song. First edit of the video. I had to wait until I got a couple things in the mail, which is ironic because my wife actually doesn't like it when I use props in my videos. She thinks it's beneath me, but I like it. I've got my magical scarf. I'll describe that in a second. I'm going to be using these props to discuss the first song on the album, Noc kada sam preplivao Dunav, the night I swam over the Danube. And this is a great opening track. As always, I didn't like it the first time, and then I keep listening to it, and now I love it. I especially love the chorus. Balašević has this ability to write these choruses where, even though I like the verse, I just cannot wait for the chorus. It's this great release. It's this word, dolazim, I'm coming. Dolazim, wow. Wonderful Josip Bošek, like Pink Floyd style guitar lines. Here, let's listen to it for a second here. The audio is not as great right now because my wife is upstairs with the baby sleeping, and we have all these white noise machines to make sure that no one wakes up the baby. So I apologize for the audio. But let's listen to this great break into this chorus. Dolazim, that just gets me psyched every time. Get it? Anyways, it's one of those choruses that's hard for me to turn off because I enjoy it just so much. Again, the drum sounds are very 1980s drum machine. At the end, there's actual wind sounds, and I think there's a lot of atmosphere to the song. And I initially thought that this song was really off in terms of the thematics of the album. It didn't seem to fit. Because this is a song about, apparently, as far as I understand the song, it's a song about like an outlaw who's been away from his home, which is, I assume, Novi Sad in Vojvodina, and he's been in Hungary, and he's been a thief and a crook, and he's running away from the law, and he had to swim across the Danube in order to make it back home. So this kind of outlaw tale, it felt to me like it was more at home with his first couple albums, with his Rani Mraz, this kind of romantic figure of an outlaw who's returning home. But really, now that I've sat with the album more, it does fit. I mean, it fits very much geographically. What's interesting is, this is all taking place in Hungary and Vojvodina, and it's all centered around the Danube. And as we will see later, he has an entire song where he talks a lot about different locations on the Danube. And if you've been to Vojvodina, the Danube is the backbone of that entire region. Of course, it goes up into Hungary as well, right? So it's not just some random story. He's not telling a story about an outlaw in Mississippi, right? He's not doing some Western story. He's very much telling a story about this region. And more specifically, with a couple of details, he's talking about a specific time period. It is a romantic time period. It's talking about the 19th century. It's talking about when this area was controlled by the Austro-Hungarians, because there's multiple specific references to that time. He refers to the Hard as being a crazy hussar, which is one of these soldiers in the Austro-Hungarian Empire. He talks about how there's a price on his head. I have to find the lyrics here. He keeps talking about the price on his head, 100 forints, which was used up in Hungary. He talks about the Carpathians, which are in Hungary. And then finally, we have this great chorus where he talks about coming back. And this is the other aspect of the story, is that throughout the album, as I've already hinted at, there is a fair amount of discussion of love and how much he loves his wife, but also the difficulties of being away, of the temptations of other women, and of life on the road, the life that he described so well in his previous albums. So there is a real sense here at least that I get, that he's singing this song about being a bandit and a criminal and a vagabond in the Carpathians and returning home to his love and giving her these gifts. And I get the sense that this is kind of a joke, but also serious. That like that's how he feels, like having toured, having to leave, and then coming back to his wife. That's the sense that I get. And it makes it a ridiculously romantic song. You know, this album is very heartfelt. It makes you love not only Balašević, but you end up loving his love of his wife, which is a real skill that he's able to have. So that's why, you know, this is for my wife's birthday, speaking of people who love their wives, you know. And so when we get to this chorus, you know, this do la zim pa pow, he actually says, "I'm coming with 100 ducats." So listen, I don't anticipate my wife understanding this. In the morning that she wakes up, I'm going to give her this scarf and this. And I don't expect her to get it right away. So on the back, I wrote the lyrics. Dolazim, što dukata donosim, kashmirsku maramu čdesni boja. Okay, so this is what 100 ducats look like. This was the money of the realm of the Austro-Hungarians. Obviously, it's not the kind of money that they used in Yugoslavia in the 1980s. And a cashmere scarf with magical colors. And you better believe that I looked up on Amazon.com, I looked up cashmere scarf, magical colors. This was the first one that came up. It's actually a pretty nice scarf. I'm coming to propose to you again, so they don't give you away to another, my love. So this image of coming back, returning home, and finding his love. It really is one of the themes of this album, that the rest of the world may be crazy, may be difficult, but he has this safety with this person that he loves. One little linguistic thing, just because it's very cute. I talk all the time about how my wife's English is so good. It is. Her English is better than mine. She edits my papers in English, my academic papers in English. But the one mistake she will make sometimes is she sometimes forgets to use articles. And it's a funny thing. If you are an American and maybe you have a Croatian wife or a Serbian wife, Makedonka wife, you know, like, you might not understand why they keep making this mistake. So the Serbian language has tenses, even for nouns. So like cases, I'm sorry, not tenses. They have cases for nouns. So you don't need definite articles. You don't need to say the Danube. So probably the only major mistake I've ever heard my wife make in English, almost 5 years of knowing her, is she said on her first date that she threw something into Danube or went across Danube. And I was like, what the? Ugh. And so it was very funny because I was thinking that, and I still tease her. I like when we went back to when we went to Serbia and we saw it, I was like, look, there is Danube, and I always kind of laugh at it. But look at the translation that I found online. This is somebody who spent the time to do a fairly good translation of this song, "The Night I Swam Over Danube." It's a very easy to make mistake. I just find it kind of funny. It's cute. Little mistakes. And hey, I make some mistakes whenever I speak Serbo-Croatian too. Sometimes my accent isn't great. All right, let's go to track number 2, Baby Blue. What's interesting about this album is I've already said that it's quite silly. Very, very Glupo. And it goes back and forth, like whiplashing. Serious, silly, serious, silly. Just, my neck hurts, okay? And that's seen nowhere better than these first 2 songs, with the theme of coming back to your lover and the night and swimming across Danube. And now we have Baby Blue, which I can't even say it like that. I have to say it like this. Baby Blue. Because that's the only way that he says it, because the entire song is sung like this, in this kind of voice. And I'll tell you, and this is just for my wife. This is not for anyone else. So it's her birthday, so you're going to have to listen to me tell my wife this. We have 3 kids. 1's a baby, 2 are teenagers. The baby enjoys this song very much. I will sing Baby Blue to her all the time, and she'll be happy. It's when you're upstairs. It's when you're not paying attention. That's when I sing Baby Blue. I listen to this album quite a bit with the kids. Never, ever play this for our teenagers. They hate this song. They hate it. They hate it. And I can't blame them. It is a very jarring song. What's interesting to me is that he's moving through American heritage. So the first two solo albums, Pub and Seroch Vierny the Kid, I don't know how you say it, were very anchored in late 1900s America, in the Western mystique. I mean, in a very real way, his first two albums kind of reminded me of the great French comic book bande dessinée Lucky Luke, with this sort of like mythological, comedic take on the American Old West. That's the kind of character that Balašević plays sometimes when he's in this sort of otherworldly mode. So there's just a couple songs on those first two albums where he's just like, I'm no longer a singer from Yugoslavia making music. I am a man with a guitar in the Old West. And here we have a song where he's moving up in time to Dixieland, to ragtime, to New Orleans in the 20s. And it's a total joke. I think, as far as I can tell, is there any importance to the song at all? Am I just missing it? I can tell you that when I listen to it, I think he's just doing it to play with rhymes. Every single thing. Like, here, I'm going to sing the song to you perfectly. Harapa lepa lubim, harapa tapa lubim, ubim, 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 alapa tapa baby. Like, that's the whole thing. It's like, it was have one rhyme, ubim, uba, uga, and then just ends it with the English words, baby. He does use the word fuchkam, which I don't know if that's just a play on the F word in English. I don't think it is. But the more that I study this, the more maybe there is something to it. I do wonder if part of this song is about, I think it's possible to do a reading of impotence in this song, that he like has stage fright and he keeps honking his horn, but it seems as though, he's suffering because he loves her. Like he can't actually, maybe not sexual impotence, but at least romantic impotence. Like he's incapable of talking to this person. He's constantly following her. He's unable to talk to her. In some ways, it reminds me of the Rani Miraz song, the one where he says, where he has a whole conversation with her in his mind, but all he can say is "G'day siti," habadaba. Like it's a sign of sort of the inability to be a great seducer. So that's interesting. That's interesting that this Baby Blue is someone who he's perhaps never talked to. But then there is a slight political bent to this. When he says, Pratim ko se udba, yarti se moja sudba, which means, I follow you like udba because you are my destiny. I didn't know what UDBA was. UDBA was the secret police in Yugoslavia. I've been to the Stasi Museum in East Germany. A fascinating place. Very, very interesting place. And obviously I've heard a lot about the KGB. But I don't know much about the Secret Service in Yugoslavia. I've actually, this is true, never heard a single conversation. I have never even heard the words UDBA until this song. How rare is that? For a country which is seen as a socialist, communist country with a authoritarian, benevolent, but still authoritarian leader, and not have their social, their police service, their secret police service, be notorious. So I don't know what the UDBA was like. Please tell me. If you are one of the Serbo-Croatian, Macedonian, Slovenian, Kosovarian, whatever. If you were in former Yugoslavia, tell me. Like, was it bad? Like, were they like the Stasi? Is this like a very crazy inclusion? Is this a huge act of political defiance to say I'm going to follow you like the Secret Service? My wife, I want you to know, I looked up on eBay and I found a hat, an Udba hat, and I almost bought it for this video. But I thought, on the off chance that the Udba are not a joking matter, on the off chance that it's like a Stasi uniform, I didn't buy it. But I don't know. So this is a song where I'm really sort of, like, I listened to it 4 times in a row, and by the 4th time I enjoyed it. And it's the joy and the frustration of Balašević. He will never let you take him too seriously. Ever, ever, ever. And because he does that, you take him more seriously than ever. Like, it's a trick. It's like a magic trick. Because the more he makes fun of himself and does goofy Glupo stuff like this, the more seriously you take him and the more whole of a person he is. God, I love this guy. He's great. I will also say that in general, the bass work on this album is bad. Sorry. I don't know who plays bass on this. I don't know if Bošek is playing bass on this. But it's a lot of slap bass. So, you know, boom, bop, slap and popping is when you play bass and you hit the bass to make a boom sound, and then like you pluck up on the string. It was used a lot in disco. It was actually, interestingly enough, invented by Drake's uncle, the musician Drake. His uncle invented slap bass. Weird. Who would think that Drake is the 2nd most important musical force in his family? But the sound, it's too clean, it's too 80s, it's too much. And I'll just be referring to the slap bass throughout this whole album, because I just wish that, like, we could redo the whole album with just less slap bass. So there's Baby Below. Now, unfortunately, and you know, hey, maybe the kids will watch this. I got to tell you, you know, we bought this on vinyl, so we're not going to be skipping to the 3rd song. So there's going to be a lot of Baby Below in this household. And part of living with my wife is Baby Below. Serious, goofy, back to serious. The next song, Morao samda se odselim. I had to move away. Musically, it's interesting. It has a lot more of, I mean, as far as I can tell, Bošek's primary influences are Pink Floyd and Queen. And he does a lot of the Queen trick. And again, it's hard to do. So saying that he's doing it is not like simple imitation, because it's a complicated thing to imitate. But sort of doubled guitars playing very epic, interesting melodies. He's very melodic as a player, Bošek. And the song, you know, starts off with this sort of triumphant beginning, wow, 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 and then it settles in to this sort of nice rising chorus. And the bass is still a little cheesy here, but everything just kind of keeps building, and it has this sense. And throughout this album, the main interaction musically, obviously, is the voice and the music, but within the music itself is the acoustic guitar, electric guitar, and synthesizers, sort of between them. It's also quite a catchy song as well, and there's just this great lead line in the chorus, great lead guitar line. Lyrically, this is an interesting one, because this is tied into a theme that he's had quite a bit, which is the effects of age. But this is more than that. This is about, like, how when you leave home, everybody freezes in your mind, and you freeze in their mind. And if you go home, you see, oh, they're all bald and fat. Okay? Bald or fat, bald and fat, wrinkled, they never lived up to their potential, they did live up to their potential, whatever it is. But when you leave home, you know, when I left Belmont, Massachusetts in 1994, whatever, 95, you know, to a certain extent, all those people are frozen there, you know? And were I to return, and especially if, you know, this were a Yugoslavian village where people stay, where very few people leave, I would see them, and it'd be kind of this jarring event. So it starts off with about these girls who used to be beautiful passing through the city. They hide their wrinkles, they fight with weight loss, time invents evil traps for them. And just when you're thinking, oh great, a sexist, tempest fugit kind of thing here, carpe diem, whatever, oh, vanity of beautiful young women, it then switches to talk about men. And talk about the best men from the promenade, from the corso. You want to understand the corso, watch my video about the first Ronnie Morao's album, where it's all about the corso. Young lions, rowdy, good-for-nothing boys, now they are drivers, storekeepers, they are hidden in dark taverns. So this is the first kind of indication of a political angle on this album of social realism. So social realism does not mean that things are realistic. It means that it is depicting the life of the lower classes. So up until the 19th century, virtually all literature was about nobility and royalty. In the 19th century, people understood, well, why don't we tell stories about farmers, shopkeepers, country doctors, whatever, not. So when you do that, it's necessarily a political act. And we're going to get into that later. But it's necessarily political because when you are not making epic romantic tales of the people in charge of society, you end up telling sad, true tales of the actual people who live there. And that's what we see here. The life of a small town where all the young men are lions and and then they just end up as drunks, storekeepers, hidden in dark taverns. So that's why he has to move out. What's interesting is the way he describes himself. I printed out the lyrics here. The way he describes himself, it was as a guy with a guitar, a little czar, a crazy bohemian. And in a way, he's sort of, I don't know, a boy with earnings that separate him from everything. From everyone. So it seems as though this is, to a certain degree, survivor's guilt, which is not a term we throw around lightly when talking about the Balkans, okay? There's a lot of that to go around. But it seems here that, he had to leave to make it and to become something important. And he did. This is, maybe the most braggadocious song in all of that I've heard of from Balašević, because now he's rich and he goes back and he has alienated himself from the sad reality of where he grew up. So I don't think it's so much that he's bragging I made it. You thought I was a little czar, but actually I'm a rock star. I don't think it's that. I think it's this bittersweet feeling that he had to move away and now he's coming back and he sees that everyone else has gotten smaller while he's gotten bigger, but he still is connected to that smallness. It's a really beautiful song. Want to listen to it a little bit? Do you feel that building sense where it just keeps going up and up? Actually, the bass isn't too bad on this one. And you hear how confident he is with his voice compared to earlier. He really is more at ease with it. Let's hear some Bošek here. That's that melodic quality that he has all the way through. He doesn't just play notes to play notes. Every single time he has these little interstitial moments in choruses, it's something that you remember and you think is awesome. Long live Josip Bošek. It's great. And that's just the thing. First time I heard the song, I thought it was cheesy. Second time, I love it. I love it now. All right, let's move on to the next one. Bela Ladja. Bela Ladja? Ladja? Labajabajah? I'm not a very good whistler. Balašević is, or maybe Josip Bošek, whoever it is that's whistling at the beginning of this very silly song. Serious, silly, serious, silly. That's how this begins. And let's just put you in the mind frame of this song, which starts off with whistling. We have some very traditional reggae guitar patterns. So doing, bap, 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 that kind of rhythmic move. Nice, silly, simple bass. It's a walk in the park. And it's very silly, and there's nothing serious about this at all. Except there is. There is a deeper meaning to this song, and this is where we're finally getting into this question of monogamy, the difficulties, the joys of monogamy. So there's a trope about a sailor, being sexually promiscuous, right? That a sailor goes from different ports and has women all over the world and is just a rambling vagabond of the sea, sleeping with many, many different women in many different countries and places. So that's the position that Balašević puts himself in, which is funny in a couple different ways. One, because he's a fat little monkey, okay? That's the way he presents himself. I'm a fat little monkey. So that's not your image. That's not a traditional Don Juan, Casanova, Lothario, right? That's not the lover man that you anticipate. In general, if I say to you, a international lover, you don't think of a silly fat monkey. But that's kind of the joke. But of course, it's also serious. It's not like Balašević was not a very famous, successful musician, a rock star. Obviously, like most musicians, like all successful musicians, he has many opportunities to sleep with many different people who he is attracted to in many different places. But he doesn't want to. What's fascinating is the image that he gives. Traditionally, whenever we talk about songs about sailors and sleeping, it's like Odysseus, right? He has to get back to Penelope. Penelope is waiting for him back at home. What makes this interesting is the image of his wife, the very important image of his wife, is as a white ship. She is the thing that is stopping him from getting off at the port, from getting off with these women in the ports. So he's constantly going back. So we have this kind of sea shanty reggae song going on here with the goofy, keychains and all of that. And it's just kind of silly. But the image is that his anchor is a ship. I think this is part of the positivity in this, is that the image of the woman that you're faithful to, or the person that you're faithful to, being back home while you're out is okay. But the image of the person being the ship, like they are partners. He couldn't get to the port without the person who is the ship, right? So it's, on the one hand, it's just a sort of, I'm not going to sleep with groupies because I love my wife so much, which is what the song's basically about. But then it's also really about the way that he couldn't go anywhere without his wife. It's beautiful. But we're not done with the seriousness of the song or the amusing nature of the song. So he describes himself as a sailor. But once again, we are returned to Gospodine Vojvodine, okay? Because I went on and I got a map and I traced every single place that he talks about sailing. So this is Danube, is the Danube River. That's Novi Sad, where he's from. He makes reference to a place called, I think it's Zemun, which is like a suburb of Belgrade. He makes reference over and over again to Sombor, which is in Vojvodina. Again, I'm hopefully going back to the Balkans this summer, and I'm going to make my wife take me to Sombor. I want to go to Sombor. Apparently there's lots of beautiful women with their boobs out. I don't know, based on the song. And then he talks about going to Pest, which is funny because Budapest has two different sides on either side of the Danube. which is interesting. One side is Buda, the other is called Pest. I learned that fact 3 days ago when my wife told me that randomly, not associated with the video. So there you go. So that's the big sailor. And it's, again, part of his very conscious effort to tie himself spatially to the north, while also, just a funny idea of being like, I'm a sailor of the Danube. Which is already funny because he already called himself on a different song the Pannonian Sailor, which is a sea that no longer exists. But if the sea did exist, it would be in this general area. He also constantly refers to something called a vidra, which according to the notes on Lyrics Translate, is what he called his wife, which means otter. So they're a fat monkey and an otter. That's their relationship. So it seems interesting that he has this sort of love song all about like all these like really hot women, you know, like let me one second. I left the lyrics over here, but I'm not going to edit this out. You can look at my bookshelf. Yeah, because, you know, he's talking all about these women, the variety of hats and the girls wear them, smiling and golden haired and all that. And it almost seems like he regrets it. And that's part of what makes it interesting, is it's difficult. The ladies are walking good for me. They throw out their chests saucy and they nod to me softly. But there's a white boat waiting for me, and when I leave, I don't come back until autumn. Many of them will marry until then. Good for me. So it's about the reality, his reality. So it's a funny kind of love song. You know, I don't know, very few people could pull off this kind of love song. Like, oh girl, I love you so much. Hey, all those other chicks who wanna bang me. I'm sorry, I love my wife. But there's so many chicks who wanna bang me. So many chicks wanna bang me. That's sort of what he's doing. But again, because he's a fat little monkey, because he does this in this kind of funny way, it doesn't come across as lascivious. It does not come across as lecherous or any other complicated words in English. A lot of people who view this are from the Balkans. I have to be honest. I make these videos for Americans. But most of the audience are from former Yugoslavia, so lascivious, and it basically just means kind of horny and lame. There's also Hungarian in here as well, kerem sempe, which means something, I don't know what in Hungarian, but it's an interesting idea that he's throwing in other languages, which is not the only time he will do that. As a matter of fact, we're going back to back with the jokes. Another joke song that's also, surprise, kind of serious. Listen, you don't understand food in Yugoslavia, in the Balkans. I study French, okay? I study French culture. I thought that I understood what it was to be a culture obsessed with food. They're not even close. Do you have any idea how awesome it is to be married to someone from the Balkans who knows how to cook food from the Balkans? Seriously? Like, listen, I'm a fat little monkey too, okay? I'm not fat and I'm not little. But I am a monkey. But I mean, like, spiritually. Spiritually, I am right there. Because when I listen to Balašević sing about food, and that's what this song is, I'll say nekad, dobro, jelo, the food was good back then. It's also about nostalgia. I'll get into that too. But his music so consistently, and there's another song that I covered, one of his singles, so consistently just is bathing in the food of Vojvodina. And one of the great surprises, you know, when I was looking for a partner, I'm not one of these guys who's like, oh, she better know how to cook. I don't, whatever. I like food, but but that wasn't one of my priorities. I just got lucky. So it's not just that Balkan food is good. It's that Balkan food culture is so good. And in particular, Vojvodinian food culture is so good. And I have learned this purely from experience, purely from sitting there and my wife explaining to me why does she cook paprikash the way she cooks paprikash, and why would someone from Vojvodina know how to cook paprikash, but someone from Niš would not. Okay? Like, fascinating stuff. Just as interesting as bouillabaisse in Marseille versus, no bouillabaisse in Paris, that kind of thing. And so there's a term in English called soul food, right? And that this pertains exclusively to African Americans and the food that they, like their cuisine that primarily was created out of necessity, right? So it's very different from other cuisines in the United States of America. But the other thing about soul food as a term is the term is so wonderful because it connects the relationship between food and identity. And as an American, we don't really have that relationship. There's a lot of great things about America, but our food culture is so diffuse that I have equal emotional connection to pizza as I do to burritos. Okay? Both of those foods are foods I've eaten hundreds of times in my life. But my connection to them is not deep. It is not a deep, soulful connection. If anything, in America, it is the lack of food culture, which is our food culture. That is its greatness. The greatness of American food culture is its lack of monoculture. It is a multiculture. But this song makes me so hungry. And it's only because of my wonderful wife that I know what half of these things are. But I can't even read the lyrics. I am not joking. I am actually salivating. Because all središte and paprikash and sarma, just all the things that he's singing about in this song. I'm not even going to play the song for you because it doesn't matter. It's got these nice bells, kind of a folky atmosphere, a circus mandolin, like a mandolin playing the actual circus melody. He has a very old-timey voice. I'm going to go out on a limb, okay? I have not checked in with this. So my wife is watching this at home. I predict that he is saying everything with a very, very thick Vojvodinian accent. That's my prediction. Because the last song that I know of that he sings basically only about food, he does it in this very thick Vojvodina accent. So there's, nice kind of like build up and release in the song with a pre-chorus and the bass gets louder. But it really is about the lyrics here. And and as far as I can tell, part of this is nostalgic, for simpler times. It says there was a good world, that beautiful 1965. But it seems like it's just an excuse to talk about times where he has traveled and eaten. And the whole time it's like he goes somewhere and he says he's desperately hungry and then he eats. And then he goes to the next place and he's desperately hungry and he eats. I talked in a previous video, I think on Ladja Circus, about the similarity between Balašević and Don Quixote, the figure, the book actually, the book which sort of puts forth the idea of romanticism as being dangerous and bad. But he is simultaneously like the man who tilts at windmills and is on a foolish romantic journey, but he's also very much Sancho Panza, Don Quixote's sidekick, who is famous for just eating all the time and for always being concerned with issues of the flesh. Like that's the beauty of Balašević, is he's able to glorify and criticize or sort of self-mock his own gluttony. Like, how did he become such a fat little monkey? For lunch, paprikash and pastries and cutlets. Oh my God, my wife, she makes these cutlets. I will say the best restaurant I've ever been to. Okay, top 3 restaurant I've ever been to was in Sarajevo, and I had a cutlet there. I think it's a pork cutlet. I don't understand why it was so good. Like I don't like cutlets. Cutlets. I've been to Germany. I've been to Munich. I've had all these cutlets, but somehow this is one of the best pieces of food I've ever eaten. A few sarmas for each person, white meat instead of bread, and he just keeps talking about this food. And I can tell you, my wife, she does her best, but she can't recreate what it's like living in Vojvodina. You know, she can't recreate the farmers markets where you can get the best peaches you've ever eaten for like 5 cents a peach. It's like, you know, because Vojvodina is very rich in farmland. It's the breadbasket, right? For the breadbasket of Yugoslavia. And it's just infused everywhere here. He talks about quince, cheese, and sweets. You know, quince is a food they eat a lot up there. Dry sausage. Sausage is so important to that area. Like, just, I can't even tell you how much sausage I've eaten since I met my wife. Chicken thighs for everyone. I actually had to go to the supermarket and listen. You're American? My wife told me to get chicken thighs, and I brought her back boneless, skinless chicken thighs. You're American. Who cares? Oh, but if you're from the Balkans, you brought back boneless, skinless chicken thighs? All of the good stuff is in the fat, is in the skin. Boneless, skinless chicken thighs is an affront. It is as offensive as margarine to a Frenchman. It is one of the most insulting things I could have possibly brought back. Sweet sky. I don't know. I thought it was the same thing. It's not the same thing. And turkey on polvarak. Where's turkey? There's pork and cakes and different kinds and noodles and poppy seeds. First Frühstück and then the road. Frühstück is German for breakfast, I think, or lunch. It's a German word, but that's part of the Vojvodinian thing. My wife told me this, that they use that word only in Vojvodina. Use that word in Niš, use that word in Beograd, use that word in Bor. No one will understand it. Pepperoni peppers, fresh shavarke, you know, the pork rinds, fast ham, horseradish, and aspic for everyone. More smfudel, more snaloke, gets more strudel. We bought burak. Again, some of the best food I've ever eaten was the burak I ate in Bosnia. I'm sorry to say to everybody in Yugoslavia, the best food I ate in Yugoslavia was in Sarajevo. I ate lots of great food in the rest of it as well. Great food in Novi Sad, great food in Belgrade, great food in, what's that place in Croatia with all the castles? You know, Croatia as well. But the best food I ate was in Bosnia. And the burak I had in Bosnia was just amazing. And you know, at the end of the song, the music ends, but he just keeps talking. He just keeps talking because he cannot stop talking about food. He just cannot. He just keeps going on and on about the butter and the sampita. And I got to tell you, this is a message to my wife. Hey, there's lots of food on here you've never introduced me to. You don't have to make it, but when we go back to former Yugoslavia, I need to eat snanorka. I need to eat sunfudnudle. I need to eat sampita. Maybe I've already eaten that because I've eaten sampita. I need to eat all this stuff, okay? Right? Baby blue. So. Silly, serious, silly. No. Serious, silly, serious, silly. Silly. Back-to-back silly. Did you notice that? It was back-to-back silly. But we did eat once well, was right after White Ship. And now we're going to go into the most serious part of the album, the emotional core of the album, potentially, and I don't know, but maybe the most important Balašević song ever made, Slovenska, which is translated as the Slavic song. I don't even think that's a good translation. I think this song should be translated as Slovenska, because I'm not sure the song can be translated. Before I get to that, gentle, soft rock drumming, at times it reminds me like of Phil Collins' solo work, very delicate melody, great interstitial moments with these clear guitar lines and synthesizers underneath. I'll play a little bit of it for you here. Sorry, I don't mean to keep moving the camera, but that's just how I have it here. So, let's skip ahead a minute. Here's the chorus. Really nice. Again, the bass is a little too slappy and poppy, but the melodic quality of the guitar. So there's this play between a melodic electric guitar lead, synthesizers, piano, and then a little kind of folk mandolin style here. I think this is, I say it all the time, when I was in former Yugoslavia, I was consistently amazed by how much music was everywhere. The same way that food is everywhere, music is everywhere. Like there's all these famous folk songs, and like every single person knows every single word to these songs. And I think sometimes what Balašević tries to and succeeds in doing is making that kind of song, the kind of song that, I don't know, a tabarashi or a folk band or whatever, that 500 years from now, there's going to be people in Vojvodina and they're going to be playing this song. And it won't be clear to them if it was written by that Balašević guy in 1985 or if it's a song that came from 1860. That it's that kind of songwriting. It's 4.5 minutes long. And it has that sort of epic feel and that epic sweep. Again, it doesn't quite fit into the fat, funny monkey theme of the cover. But it's definitely... So why do I think we should call it Slovenska and not the Slavic song? This is a song which I don't think can be translated. I don't like saying that because I'm a language professor, okay? So I don't like implying that I'll never get it. But what it's about is the dusha slovenska, the Slavic soul. And I think to a degree, that is meaningless. Let me explain. What does it mean, a Slavic soul? For every single Slavic person who is hearing me ask that question, there is an answer that is a little bit or very different from the Slavic person next door. Same thing with any culture. What is an American soul? I can outline basic ideas of what an American soul is. I don't know, a certain kind of optimism, naivete, a tendency towards individualism. I'd say that. That's the sort of like baseline of the American soul. But still, if you call something American soul, it's very complicated. So why I think this song is so great is in the ambiguity of the poetry. So this is not baby below. This is very serious writing that is very emotional and very poetic. Let's just start off with the beginning. This is a translation that I found from Lyrics Translate. There are 3 different translations. My dear friend Milos tried to help me, but ultimately there's only so much you can help me. Carried with a breath of a dream, a black pigeon landed on my palm. Black pigeon. A black pigeon? Are pigeons black? Can you have a black pigeon? I think this is supposed to represent death. Or is it like the Christian concept of a bird representing the Holy Spirit, representing the soul? Is the black pigeon the Slavic soul itself? I don't know. I don't know. You tell me. Damn it. I don't know. Balašević has passed. Unfortunately, unjustly, unfairly. And I don't think he would give you an answer if you asked him. What is this black pigeon? Like I flew with him with heavy wings filled with lead, and I saw the world hidden behind golden clouds. The world hidden behind golden clouds. So golden clouds are beautiful and imply richness, but hiding the world implies obscuring something. Yeah, poetry. If I die young, plant only a rosemary on my grave. Don't let them make it out to be a sad third act. Don't let them give me a speech. Let them leave garlands to someone else. If I die young, stopped in between a step and a dream. So then it seems to be a song about dying young. So maybe this black pigeon is death. Maybe this is the black pigeon taking his soul out of his body and up above. But he doesn't want to be remembered. And also he's dead, you know? So like, if you listen to the song now, you're like stuck in this situation where like he's singing about dying young, and then he did die young. I mean, he was in his 60s, but he was still young. So, you know, so he's telling you like not to mourn him. And then it breaks into this chorus. Hug me now the best you can, and don't give me away to a blackbird. Oh no, don't worry. It will be over fast. I'm only a little bit crazy and in love. The ancient North is alone in my veins, and sometimes I don't know what is wrong with him. Why is he acting crazy? Happiness and sorrow, my simple Slavic soul. So, we had the sense that he's clinging on to life, right? He's clinging on to life, but he's also letting go at the same time. And then we get to the end of this chorus, this gorgeous chorus. And I'm stuck. I'm stuck because I cannot translate it. I literally cannot translate it. I have done my best. Miloš has helped me. My wife will help me, but I will not get an answer. Što luduje od sreće tugu tka. Moja prosta duša Slovenska. Those words are translated as follows. These are multiple different translations, okay? So, I'm just finding my conversation here with Miloš. What makes one, this is the automatic translation. What makes one mad weaves sadness from happiness, my simple Slavic soul. First translation. Why it plays the fool weaves sadness out of joy, my simple Slavic soul. 3. Why is he acting crazy? From happiness he needs sorrow, my simple Slavic soul. 4th, oh, why is it gallivanting, weaving sorrow out of joy, this simple Slavic soul out of me? To which Miloš says, definitely not 1 or 4. 4 was my favorite. 2 and 3 can be interpreted as correct. The line što luduje od sreće tugu tka can either refer to the Old North that is alone in the author's veins, leaving moja prosta duša Slovenska as a lone statement without an explicit point. Or you can interpret his Slavic soul as the one knitting sadness out of happiness. As for what luduje, whoever it might refer to, I would say the best translation is acting up. A more mild action between acting crazy and playing the fool. There's further ambiguity, as something što luduje can mean two things. Either that the thing that does something, or why does it do something. So this is an expression in Serbo-Croatian which can either mean something that does something, or why does it do that thing. What do you mean? Serbo-Croatians, what the hell are you talking about? Miloš, what are you talking about? Dear wife, what does this mean? Što luduje can mean the something that does something, or why does it do that thing? Okay, this is why I will always call this song Slovenska. Because it is very not clear what this line means. How do I interpret it? I interpret it as his simple Slavic soul weaving sadness out of joy and acting silly. But acting silly in a grand way. That what he's really talking about is not his personal silliness, but the silliness of all humans. That we just do this. That the simple Slavic soul that he's talking about with the veins of the north, right? That it's like we, humans, all humans, have this simple, silly little soul. Like the most important thing you could possibly have as a human being is a soul, right? Your spirit, whatever you want to call it. And it's simple. It's silly. Even though it is the most serious thing you can possibly talk about, it is silly. What does Balašević do? He treats serious things in a silly way, and he treats silly things in a serious way. So this mixture of joy and sadness is constantly mixing together, and that it's in that mixture that the Slavic soul can be described. I can't help but think about the kind of music Sevdalinka, which is another it's a sort of a very sad kind of music that's made in former Yugoslavia, that sort of like revels in its sadness, but through reveling in sadness, it creates joy. There's something, as far as I can tell, and I must admit I have to be humble. I don't know. Feel free to tell me in the comments if you have figured out this song. It's okay. But as far as I can tell, that's what it's about. About the silly seriousness of a soul that constantly weaves joy and sadness together. Which is what Balašević did in his music while he was alive, before the black pigeon took him away. Golub means pigeon. And I want to tell a story about my wife. We were driving to Lepa, which is like a Neolithic site. It's a place right on the border with Bulgaria, in the east part of what is now Serbia. And it's great. It's amazing. It's an amazing prehistoric site. Everyone should go. Lepa. Wonderful place to go. And while we were driving there, we stopped and we got gas. And we got gas at a gas station called Goluba, which meant pigeon, which is funny. This is funny. Like, why do you have a gas station called Pigeon? And we're sort of in the middle of nowhere. Just like, there's some like hills, but just very rural, very much nowhere. And this dog appears. Just out of nowhere. Just there's wild dogs all over Serbia. None in Sarajevo, but lots in Serbia. It's a cultural thing. Tons in Serbia. So there's tons of dogs in Serbia, and this dog comes up to us. I'm filling up the car with gas, and the dog comes up. And my wife, looks at this dog and can tell that it's hungry. And then she looks across the street, and she sees that there's a butcher. So she goes takes my daughter, maybe my son too, he might have stayed in the car, I don't know, but at least goes with my daughter and goes to the butcher and buys sausage. And she comes back and she gives it to the dog. To me, from my experience with my wife, that is the golub. That is the simple Slavic soul. But it's that joy, it's the sadness all together, you know, because that poor dog, it's just stuck there. It didn't ask to be born in such a harsh condition. It didn't ask to be abandoned, you know, exiled from a house and just wandering the streets randomly. But then there's the joy of feeding it and its happiness and its tail wagging. Okay. Did I cry? Jeez. All right. Sorry. It's weird because I didn't know anything about Balašević, and then right as I started to know who he was, he died. And it's very sad. So, I guess I cried. Remember about the whiplash? Serious. Funny. Serious. Funny. We go from the absolute deepest, darkest path of the dark pigeon who's carrying Balašević's silly soul off to heaven into a song about some hot actress. Ladies and gentlemen, we're back to Silly Town. From Golub to Glupo. But before I get to this goofy song, I do want to say that it actually happened to me, where I was listening to Slovenska, and I was reading the lyrics in English for the first time. And even though I still don't understand what they mean, I was crying uncontrollably. So it's a real feat that you can communicate that much just with the music, just with the feeling. Okay, let's get silly now. Mani me say lepa Nasto. Don't bother me, pretty Nasta. A very silly song about being pursued by Natasha Kinski. Natasha Kinski, daughter of Klaus Kinski, absolute international sex symbol. Okay? Again, all the serious songs by Balašević are also a little bit silly, and all the silly songs are also a little bit serious. This is going back to these themes of monogamy, the difficulty of monogamy. This is about lust and inversion. Musically, like a drum machine starts off. The song has these sort of like cha-cha rhythms with these snare hits. It's maybe the most kind of straight down the middle style sounding song. A nice slide guitar. Again, the super like cha-cha, very drum machine driven. Drum machines, Josip, and Balašević. That's his whole album. Kind of cheesy keyboards there. There are some great, like an actual guitar solo from Bošek. So for the most part, he's just playing songs or just playing little bits that create sort of interesting melodies. Here it's an actual like shredding solo, more slap bass here. Nice kind of like stops and starts in the chorus though. And the whole thing starts off with that kind of melodic slide play. But let's get to the lyrics because that's what's most interesting. So I am a fan of Natasha Kinski. So, you've seen a couple props that I've brought in here. And I looked up, so there's a famous photograph of Natasha Kinski taken by Richard Avedon where she's naked with a snake wrapped around her body. And I thought, what would be a good gift for her is if I bought that. But first of all, you can't get a good print of it for like under $500. And realistically, I would not be buying a naked picture of Natasha Kinski. That's not a good gift for your wife, which goes into this song, actually. Anyways, it's funny. So it's funny because it's all about this inversion, the idea that he is being pursued by Natasha Kinski. Now, he starts everything off by saying he's pursued by her in his dreams. So there's that. But again, much like Bela Ladja, the song about the white boat, it's Where that song was him saying that he needs to be monogamous even though he has lots of opportunities, here he is being faithful even when the opportunity is not there. Right? I mean, in general, they say that infidelity is a crime of opportunity for men, and that does appear to be the case. So this is kind of funny because it's essentially imagining the hottest woman in the world. And in 1985, if you've ever seen the movie Cat People, you know, Natasha Kinski was the hottest woman in the world. She just was. This is just facts. What are you going to do? You know, that the absolute epitome of female attractiveness and beauty, and he is shutting her down in his dreams. Okay? So, in his dreams, you know, he's free. He's free in his dreams, but he's shutting her down in his dreams. There is a small political aspect to this where he refers to her as Comrade Kinski, which, well, how do they say that? Drugarica Kinski. You know, this is a way that they would refer to each other in Yugoslavia, which socialist Yugoslavia, seen as very communist. At least calling each other comrade is a very sort of communist style thing to do. And that is a thing that people would refer to each other. Like I've seen some movies where whenever characters are trying to instill a certain, like, if a male and a female are getting too close to each other, they might use the term comrade to help establish some distance. I think that's a specific thing to Yugoslavia, not even to the Balkans, but to Yugoslavia. Like, there's a sort of desexualizing effect of calling someone a comrade. Leave me alone, Comrade Kinski. I was born for another woman. It's not your fault. Don't take it personally. Leave me alone, pretty Nastya. And it ends on a total joke where he talks about being tall and blonde, and he's not. We know that he's not tall and blonde. What is he? He's a fat little monkey. You know that I'm like saying that affectionately, right? It's not my fault that that's how he presents himself. I actually think Balašević was a very handsome guy. Seriously, I do. But he is always so insistent on making himself look so silly. So there's a whole political aspect to the song. Like he says, go back to your rotten West, meaning like your rotten Western society, you know, like in opposition to Yugoslavia, in opposition to good communist and socialist countries. The idea of the West being corrupt and rotten is part of anti-West propaganda. So there is a degree to which this is a song about you know the degrees to which he loves his wife and he's not interested in her, but also there's an idea that maybe this is representing the West itself, that the desire to be with her is like someone from a communist or socialist country becoming enamored with the West, enamored with images, you know, Baywatch, right? Whatever it is, you know, they say that Baywatch helped to end communism or whatever, right? Just that the idea that an attractive woman, this kind of lifestyle, that's what he's actually rejecting. And that idea is reinforced when he says, go back to your rotten West, to Paris, Texas, and among the cat people. By the way, this is just to my wife. We need to finish watching Paris, Texas. Paris, Texas by Wim Wenders, one of my favorite movies. We started watching it together like 3 years ago, but we never finished it. So we need to finish it. We didn't even get to the part where she's in the booth, in the peep show. And among cat people, I'm not going anywhere from Bačka. So Bačka, I had to look this up, is on the Pannonian Plain. This I really want to go to. So this summer, if we end up in Vojvodina, hopefully, just join up my Instagram and you will see pictures of me from the Bačka Palanka, which is like this place in Vojvodina. So it's possible to read the song in both ways. That it's a rejection of the West while acknowledging how seductive the West is, and a rejection of other women, despite how seductive they might be, even if they're Natasha Kinski. So it's a silly song, totally goofy, but also serious and geopolitically serious. In an important way, the next song is actually about the woman who he is forsaking all those other women for. This is the heart of the album. Okay? So this is the fourth and last song on this album about monogamy and about his great love for his wife. And it's called Olivera, and that's his wife's name, who married in 1981. How many things happened in 1981 in Yugoslavia? A lot of things. It's a very sweet song. I'll play it for a second here. Kind of mid-tempo, that very chorus effect on the guitar. This little bit of here is nice with the keyboard. Oh, well, usually it goes boo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo. It's a nice song. You know, his voice sounds kind of tired. That great synth line. My favorite Bošek moment, actually I have to play it for you. My favorite Bošek moment is in the chorus where he plays these curled canned shrimp guitar lines. In the post-chorus. How metallic and cool that sounds. Right here. Really great. Just great. I mean, this is Bošek at his best because he's adding so much with these little guitar lines and even these ooh-ooh-oohs underneath. They just go so nicely together. I didn't even notice the ooh-oohs because I'm just blinded by the tastefulness of Bošek's playing. Like every Balašević album has at least one song that can end with cha-cha-cha. I don't know why. But then we get to the lyrics. And this is funny because I didn't know that his wife was named Olivera. I didn't know that until I had read this translation. And the translation was like, on the threshold of my 20s, I was easy to get. Forbidden fruit calling from all sorts of branches. You were but a girl. You're the ponytail flying like a butterfly. So I was like, ew. Like, based on a strict English translation, I thought it was a song about a guy in his 20s who was attracted to a child. So I was like, what the hell is this? Like, this isn't nice, old, young Balašević. This isn't good family man. Like, I was like, ew, TCBia još devojčica. Ugh, you were just a little girl. Ugh. But then I learned, just looking up, I just happened to look up Olivera. I looked up Olivera on Google. Olivera plus Balašević. And who popped up? Olivera Balašević, his wife. Now his widow. Jesus Christ, I'm going to cry again. So this totally transforms the song to me. It went from like a weird song where I thought he was like writing about like the impulses of a pedophile, which I was not happy about at all. But instead, it is the culminating moment of this whole album, the decisive moment of this whole album, where he talks about his love of his wife, how much he loves her, how much he wants her, and how much he feels like he was always meant for her. So she's a little bit younger than him. That's why she was just a girl. And the crazy thing is, my wife is a little bit younger than me, 7 years younger than me. And I often think about that, you know, like in the 90s when I was living in America and I was living a fairly charmed life and she was going through a civil war. You know, when I was 14, I was really worried because, I don't know, who knows what, whatever. Kurt Cobain was telling me to be nervous about stuff, or I don't know what. And meanwhile, you know, she was going through a civil war, 14 to 7. That's a huge difference. And it's great because I do feel like my whole life I was meant to be with her. And I had this feeling, and like here she is, and she exists. And so it ends up being the sweetest possible song. You know, the otter from the white ship has now become this fully fleshed out human being. And he rejects all of the chesty women from Budapest, and he rejects Natasha Kinski, and he now is here just for her. And that's what this song is about. And it's beautiful. And how he sort of wishes he could have just waited for her to grow up so that they could be together. So, Olivera. A beautiful song. Milos, it's funny because I asked him, I'm like, is this like a weird, creepy song? And then I figured it out. He's like, yes, this is one of my favorite songs. And it makes sense. Oh no, I have to get home. I had to stop there. We had an appointment at 3, a doctor's appointment at 3, and I was recording up until like 2 o'clock, and I work half an hour from home. So in case you're wondering why I almost missed our doctor's appointment, dear, moja draga, it's because I was recording this video. But I have 2 more songs left to go, okay? So we'll be fine. The second to last song is one of my favorite songs on the album. Probably the coolest song on the album, like the song where you could just like play this for someone and they'd be like, cool. Putu središte, zemlje, journey to the center of the earth, labicima sa concerta u Puli, labicima at a concert in Pula. I'll describe all of that here. Now, first of all, musically what makes it so cool is actually the slap bass here matches the atmosphere of the song in general quite well. The guitar is right in the front and center, again, very catchy. And then in the chorus, we have this almost robotic sounding ooh. These oohs and oohs, they're just so cool. As we'll see, they I think are intentional, where they sort of sound like a worker singing a song. You know, like someone on a chain gang, or the 7 little dwarfs singing in the mines. As we'll see, mines are at the very center of this song. I have to make sure Toby's where. Hey, Toby, I'm making a video, so please stop whining. Do you want to see Toby? Let's wait. I'll show Toby on the next song. That's our dog here. Another really killer guitar solo on this song. Very sort of, again, very Queens-like. Brian May, the guitarist from Queen. I don't know. I've never read any interviews with Josip Bošek, but I'm assuming that he is the primary influence on Bošek. The bass just goes really hard here. I think what I like about this song, why I like this song more with the bass, is that it goes harder into this kind of bass style. Whereas in other songs, I feel like it's going a little bit far, but not quite far enough. I don't know if that makes sense. Let's talk about the lyrics, okay? Journey to the center of the earth. Now, first of all, I am a French professor, so obviously I'm thinking of Jules Verne and his book, Journey to the Center of the Earth, which is an important book. And actually, I ordered off of Amazon a bilingual version of the book. I was going to read some sections of the book and tie it into this song, but unfortunately it hasn't showed up yet. So I don't know, maybe I'll be able to insert that later in the video, who knows. But what's interesting is he makes direct reference to some Frenchman who wrote a book. And very clearly, Balašević is writing about Jules Verne, who wrote this book. But I think there's another Frenchman who we need to talk about. Serge Gainsbourg. Probably the most important singer-songwriter of the 20th century in France. Because this song, I think, Journey to the Center of the Earth, is in conversation with a very famous, the first single from Serge Gainsbourg, Poinçonneur des Lilas, the ticket puncher of Lilas Station. I'm going to describe that as we go, but the main similarity between these two, beyond the fact that they both are stories about people who work in holes underground, is that they are both great examples of social realism. Now, I touched on this briefly before, but this is really important. It's an important concept to understand and to teach. I teach it all the time to my students. Social realism is the act of treating working class people as though their stories matter. And this is the story of a miner, somebody who actually works underneath the earth. And it's fascinating because in this song, Poinçonneau de Lilas, it's a story about a ticket puncher in the metro. So the ticket puncher in the metro, he just punches tickets to make sure that people can get, when they're on the train, that they paid for their ticket. And Gainsbourg describes this whole guy's life, that he lives in a hole and he punches holes, and someday he'll end up in a hole under the ground, and he'll be happy to be dead because he'll no longer have to punch little holes. So it's a beautiful song about sort of urban neglect and the lower classes and the kind of life that they have to live, right? Just sitting there punching holes underground. This is a less urban variation on that same theme. We have somebody who is stuck in a hole. He wakes up, he goes into a hole, he mines, and he comes out. Now, accompanying this social commentary on the miserableness of working in a mine, his girlfriend leaves him at the very beginning because she doesn't know if he's dead or alive, and he just says, you know what, you're better off. And I've only, listened to 6 or 7 Balašević albums at this point, but it's a very consistent theme of him leaving or women leaving him and just saying, you're better off without me. Just telling women you're better off without me. But usually it's because he's a vagabond who can't be home and can't treat his woman well. Here, she's better off because he just goes off into a hole all the time. What I like about this, and this is what's hinted at, again, in the Gainsbourg song, is this idea that you have no idea how dark it is. I think the lyric is, you have no idea what darkness is. And there's this real sense that there's a desire to be understood and to sort of understand just how bad it is for him in this situation, living in this world underground. And the way that he describes it's quite poetic. Down there, devils are reproducing. 3 mountains press against my neck. 3 mountains press against my neck. That's the image that he's presenting of these miners. One Frenchman, some wise writer, prophesized a lot of things. Maybe he never worked as a miner. And he talks about how in Journey to the Center of the Earth, in the middle of the earth, the sun is shining. So this is becoming a sort of paradoxical liberation narrative. The idea is that if he keeps digging, if he digs enough underground, he will eventually find the center of the earth where the sun is shining and where he will find light. It is terribly sad. Again, it ties in a little bit to this Gainsbourg song, Poinçonneau de Lilas, because in that book, in that song, the protagonist also reads a little story in Reader's Digest about how nice and sunny it is in Miami. And in both cases, there's this feeling that the only way out is down, underground. The only way out is death. And I think that saying that, maybe he'll be at the bottom of the hole and he'll be able to be free, maybe he will see the sun is shining in the middle of the earth. We know this is not true. We know this is not going to happen. What I particularly like about this song, as a person who teaches literature, is it's using science fiction and social realism at the same time. So traditionally, science fiction and social realism don't go together. Science fiction is often seen as escapist, as fantasy. You imagine yourself on some distant planet with a race of different aliens. You imagine all sorts of magical things as a way to escape the monotony of your life. The opposite of that is social realism, where you read stories about people who wake up and go and work in a hole and whose wives leave them and they're really sad, okay? So this is mixing those together. It's showing how fantasy, how science fiction distracts these people in these really terrible situations, living through the sad social reality of having to work in a hole. And so how it's really hoping that science fiction becomes a reality. You see that? See how that kind of works? You see the different levels that Balašević is working on here? So I really, really enjoy this song. I'm going to play a section of it for you So I'm going to play you a little bit of the chorus. And you can't really hear it that well because there's all the white noise machine and all that, and I'm playing it through my computer. But still, if you can, listen to it on your own. Go ahead to the 30th second, and you'll just hear this, woo, these sounds. It's very upbeat, very cool sounding music, and in reality, it's just a very, very sad story. And there he starts talking about the Frenchman who talks about the land underneath the middle of the earth. So this is a political aspect of this song, is it not? Social realism is in and of itself a political act. In my classes, I give the example of the difference between, the Avengers and Joker. Right? Joker is a movie that is really about social realism, about the failure of the state to help the needy. Whereas, the Avengers is a story of a bunch of super-powered people fighting mythical evils and different planets and all that. So that really is the emphasis, that he's talking about someone who lives a Joker life and reads the Avengers to escape. One other thing. And this is, I'm going to once again thank Miloš Spasojević, because there's the subtitle to this song, Labințima sa concerta u Puli. And I understood sa concerta u Puli, a concert in Pula, a city in Croatia, but I didn't understand what Labințima was. And so I asked him, and he said, Labințini is a term for the citizens of Labin, Croatia. It's a small town with a very long history going back to the Roman Empire. It is a coal mining town. At one point, they had 4 different coal mines. They also had a strike that grew into one of the first anti-fascist movements in the 1920s. So this is not some coincidence, okay? He's not talking about miners in general. He's talking about a specific problem in Yugoslavia of these exploited miners, or just these miners who live these terrible lives. He's actually making it about citizens of Yugoslavia who were mining. This was for them. Now apparently the mine closed in 1989. Don't really know why. But still, it's very clear. The message of this song, it is to the citizens of Labin. And let's not forget, there's lots of mining towns in Serbia, in Croatia, all over the Balkans. And I'm going to, right before I left to get to that doctor's appointment, I recorded just a little bit about one other mining town, which, if it were up to me, this song would have been dedicated to. This is my last prop for the video. This is a little sculpture that was given to me when I visited where my wife grew up, partly, in the town of Bor. So even though this song is dedicated to a mining town in Croatia, I sort of wish it was dedicated to Bor, because Bor has a copper mine, and it's a very tough life, and the people who live there live these kinds of experiences. So I keep this in my office. I keep it right here in my office, and I keep it to remember those times, but also to just, be reminded that my job can be tough. I have to go to a lot of meetings. To deal with a lot of administrative difficulty. But I don't have to be this guy. I don't have to be buried underneath 3 mountains. So, anyways, Bor. Or as we called it in Cyrillic, Bop. I haven't included the dogs yet in the video. And if you know anything about my wife, you know that she loves her dogs. So I thought with this Christmas Eve theme, I would show you the Christmas tree. So, sorry again, it's so loud here. We have an air purifier, we have a white noise machine, but fortunately, mother and child are sleeping upstairs, like they were at the morning of Christmas. Anyways, we're getting onto the song Christmas Eve, Badjne, Vece, and in the same way that I felt like the first song didn't quite fit, the night I crossed over the Danube, I'm not quite sure how this song fits into the rest of the album. Musically, it's very simple. It's just an acoustic guitar, every once in a while bolstered with some synthesizers, that Balašević always and Bošek know how to mix together the synthesizers and keyboards quite well. But the song itself is weird. It's kind of maudlin. It's sort of sad. It appears to be a song about sort of Christmas Eve. So you think, oh, it's going to be a happy Christmas song. It's going to be Jingle Bell Rock. But it's not at all. It's a very sad song that appears to be remembering someone very close to him who died on Christmas Eve. As eternally you dream, you travel the world without going on the journey, and Christmas Eve is coming. You could have told me such sudden words. My eyes are filled with the fog. That was our last Eve, and now the bells are ringing again. I listen to them. Not every Eve is Christmas's, but this one is, by chance, is the Christmas Eve. So it's a song of mourning that's also a Christmas song, which is pretty serious and pretty sad. But I don't know. I don't know how I can even really fit this into the thematics of the rest of the album. I don't think I really can, except for maybe this. I think it's that this album really is contending with the greatness of a happy monogamous love, a happy marriage, right? So there is something about this song that ends, that has this whole bit about a grandmother making cookies for her grandchildren, where there is a sense of like a long life lived and a loss, but a loss that's so heavy because the connection was so great. But again, I guess, with Balašević passing towards the end of the year as well, it is odd because I sort of associate Balašević's death with Christmas, like with this time of year. So maybe that's also this weird sort of life imitating art. Anyways, I don't know. That's a sad ending to this album, this really wonderful album. So I'm going to end this video a lot more fun. First of all, of course, you're going to get the dogs again. Look at them, huh? Sleeping all peacefully, huh? Once again, that's Bo. Hi, Bo. And that's Toby. Hey, Toby. What's up, Toby? Yeah. Leave a like if you... Tell me in the comments, who do you like more, Bo or Toby? Yeah, Toby's worried about this. But I always end these videos with a performance of one of the songs. So my apologies to the great George Balašević as I massacre another one of his songs. But here we go. It's part of the birthday gift. Na mostu sme na straže, znal sam da me traže, žandara nema koji ne zna moj lik. Car moja glava vredi 100 forinti, gospodo draga. Pod slikom toliko piše, vredi bar kočirovi se. Dobro smo krčme znali, dobre smo konje krali. Dobra da neka zvezda pratila svud. Ostatje s Bogom Just what word is that? Ostatje. Ostatje s Bogom, zeleni Karpati, drubovomi sarski. Długo sam bio daleko, dal me podzielonego dolazim, što długo ta donosim. I kaszmirsku maramu čudesna boja dolazim, da te opet zaprosim, dok te drugom i ne daju ljubavi moja. Dolazim, rpa-daka-daka-di, watu, da-pa-da-pa-di-da-du, du-ba-du-da. O dolazim, ta-raka-taka zaposim, duku. da 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 lubavi moja. I've recorded that like 10 times. That's the best I got. The thing about Balašević I'm learning as I'm trying to sing his songs, not only do I not speak Serbo-Croatian very well, the things that I've been learning are his phrasing is really impressive. I mean, if you really look at the chords and how they line up with his words, he's able to fit in all these little words like chudesni boja and drumovi sarski. Like, he's able to fit in all these sort of seemingly non-censored, like words that shouldn't fit the meter, but he's able to fit them. And I think that's maybe one of his skills, which I didn't emphasize in the rest of the video. It's his ability to go in between a spoken register and a singing register. He's very, very good at that. I think that's maybe part of the reason why we feel so emotionally close to him. Anyways, I'm wrapping up this scarf now. I'm never going to wear it again, unless I forget my scarf and my wife lends it to me. I'm going to put my card in here. This is going to be for her birthday. I was going to sing Slovenska, but I can't. I started. I can't sing that song without crying. It turns out that song is very emotional to me. What can I do? So instead, she gets that. I always sing one song to her at the end of every video. So there's my gift to her, and srećan rođendan. There's the camera.